The morning was quiet on the edge of the human colony. The sun barely peeked through the gray clouds, and the wind carried the smell of wet soil. Mark Rivers, a human engineer, was repairing a small hover vehicle near the tree line. His tools clinked as he worked, and the only sound was the soft hum of the machine. He liked mornings like this, calm and simple, with no rush, no alarms. But that peace would not last. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught his eye. A small figure was running from the forest. Mark looked up and froze. The figure was a child, but not a human child. Her skin was pale blue and her eyes were wide, shining like stars. Her hair floated around her face, almost glowing in the dim morning light. She ran fast, faster than any human could. She stumbled over roots and rocks, and then, almost without thinking, she ducked behind Mark. She pressed herself to him, her body trembling. "Please don't let them take me," she whispered, her voice shaking. Mark's heart jumped. He looked up and saw 3 figures emerging from the forest. They were tall, armored, and terrifying. Their eyes glowed red under their helmets. They moved with purpose, and their weapons were pointed directly at him. "Give her to us," the leader said in a harsh voice that made Mark shiver. "The child belongs to the clan. Do not interfere, human." Mark swallowed hard. He had no weapon, only a wrench in his hand. But he could not let them take her. Not like this. He crouched slightly in front of her. I can't," he said. "She's safe with me." The leader narrowed his eyes. "You do not understand. She is a traitor's child. Hand her over, or you will regret it." Mark's mind raced. He had no idea why the child was being hunted, but the fear in her eyes told him everything. Whatever she had done, it was serious. He clenched his fist around the wrench. "I don't care," he said. "No one hurts her while I am here." The child peeked from behind him. Her name was Lyra, though Mark did not know it yet. Her small hands gripped his shirt as if holding on to life itself. She looked at him with a mixture of fear and hope, and Mark realized that she trusted him completely. That trust was heavy, almost frightening, but he could not betray it. The lead hunter took a step forward, raising a strange device in his hand. A low hum filled the air and a red beam scanned the area. Mark's heart pounded. If that beam touched her, he didn't know what would happen. Lyra cried softly, hiding closer to him. The other 2 hunters flanked him, weapons ready. Every instinct told Mark to run, but there was nowhere to go. Then something unexpected happened. A small drone buzzed past the hunters, knocking one off balance. Mark used the moment to grab Lyra's hand. "Come on," he said, pulling her toward his outpost. She stumbled but followed him without hesitation. They ran through the open field, the wind whipping past their faces, the hunters close behind. Mark's mind raced. Who were these people? Why did they want her? And what had she done to deserve this? Lyra did not answer, only clinging to him, her small body shaking. Every step, every second was filled with fear. They reached the outpost, and Mark slammed the door shut, locking it quickly. He leaned against the wall, panting. Lyra's eyes were wide with fear, but she looked at him with something else too, a tiny spark of relief. You won't let them take me?" she whispered. "No," Mark said firmly. "I promise. I will protect you." Outside, the hunters shouted. Their voices were angry, demanding. The metal walls of the outpost vibrated as they tried to break in. Mark looked at the girl. Her trembling hands clutched a small pendant around her neck. He had no idea what it meant, but he knew it was important. Somehow it was the reason they were after her. Mark and Lyra crouched in the corner. The storm of noise outside made the outpost feel tiny and fragile. Yet in that moment, Mark knew one thing clearly. He would not let anyone hurt this child. Not today, not ever. The air was thick with tension. Every sound, every shadow made them jump. The hunters would not give up easily, and whatever secret this little girl held, it was dangerous. Very dangerous. Mark glanced at her again. Her eyes were shining with unshed tears. Something about her story was bigger than anything he had imagined, and he knew, deep down, that their lives were about to change forever. The chase had just begun. The metal walls of the outpost shook again as another blast hit. Dust fell from the ceiling. Mark could hear the hunters outside shouting in their strange alien tongue. The sound made his skin crawl. He looked down at the small alien girl beside him. She sat quietly, hugging her knees, her big blue eyes staring at the locked door. "What do they want from you?" Mark asked softly. She hesitated before answering. "They say I carry shame," she whispered. "They say my father betrayed our people." Mark frowned. "Betrayed? How?" Lyra's voice trembled. He didn't want war. He told them fighting was wrong. But the council called him a traitor. They came for him one night. He told me to run. Mark felt a heavy ache in his chest. This little girl had seen things no child should ever see. And your father? He asked gently. She lowered her head. I don't know, she said. I just ran until I found you. Outside, the hunters fired again and the blast shook the building hard. Mark checked the security monitor. 3 armored figures still there. They were trying to break through the shield. He had maybe a few minutes before they got inside. Listen, Lyra, he said, crouching next to her. We can't stay here. They'll break through soon. We need to move. Her eyes widened. But where? Mark pointed toward the small tunnel at the back of the outpost. Maintenance shaft. It leads to the cliffs. From there we can reach the old mines. It's not safe, but it's better than waiting here. She nodded, trying to be brave, though her hands were shaking. Mark grabbed a small bag, some tools, energy cells, and a flashlight. He turned back to her. Stay close, no matter what happens. As they crawled into the narrow shaft, the sound of metal breaking echoed behind them. The hunters had forced their way in. Move, Mark whispered sharply. Lyra crawled faster, her small hand scraping against the rough walls. A loud crash followed, and a red beam of light swept through the shaft entrance. One of the hunters had found them. Mark turned, threw a small flash charge, and the explosion filled the tunnel with blinding light. The hunter roared in pain, and Mark pushed Lyra forward. They came out on the side of a cliff, the sky now dark with clouds. Rain began to fall, cold and heavy. The wind howled around them. Far below, the rocky valley stretched into shadows. Lyra shivered. Mark pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around her small frame. Keep moving, he said, his voice calm but firm. They slid down the cliff, hiding behind rocks and broken trees. The sound of engines filled the air. The hunters had sent drones, small machines with red scanning lights. One passed close above them, humming like an angry insect. Mark held his breath, pulling Lyra close. The drone paused, then moved away. When the noise faded, Lyra whispered, Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. Mark looked at her. The rain dripped from his hair, his face tired but kind. Because no one should be hunted for doing the right thing, he said simply. She stared at him for a moment, her eyes softening. No one had ever spoken to her like that. They reached an old path leading toward the abandoned mining tunnels. The air smelled of rust and dust. Mark pushed open a heavy metal door and they stepped inside. The darkness swallowed them and only the faint beam of Mark's flashlight lit the way. Lyra walked beside him quietly. For the first time since he found her, she seemed calmer. My father said humans were dangerous, she whispered. He said they take what they want. Mark smiled faintly. Maybe some do, but not all of us. They stopped near a corner where the tunnel split into 2. Mark checked his scanner. No signals nearby, at least for now. We'll rest here, he said. Lyra sat on the ground, pulling her knees close again. Mark handed her a small energy bar. She hesitated, but then took a small bite. The look of gratitude on her face was silent but powerful. For a few minutes, the world felt still. The rain outside faded to a soft murmur. But deep inside the tunnel, something echoed, a faint metallic sound like a machine waking up. Mark froze. Stay quiet, he whispered. He aimed his flashlight toward the noise. 2 red lights appeared in the dark, blinking slowly. It wasn't over. The hunters had found a way in. Mark stood, pulling Lyra behind him. His voice was calm, but his heart was racing. Run when I say, all right? She nodded. As the red lights came closer, Mark tightened his grip on his tool, a makeshift weapon in human hands, but in his eyes, it was enough to protect her. The chase had truly begun. The rain outside turned heavier, echoing through the old mining tunnels. Water dripped from the ceiling, forming tiny puddles on the dusty floor. Mark and Lyra moved deeper inside, their flashlight cutting through the darkness. Each step echoed like thunder in the hollow space. Mark's arm ached from the earlier fight, but he didn't stop. He knew the hunters were close. Every few minutes he could hear the distant hum of drones searching above the ground. Lyra followed quietly, her glowing eyes scanning every shadow. Finally, they reached a small side chamber. Mark closed the rusted door behind them and leaned against it, breathing hard. We should be safe here for a bit, he said. Lyra nodded, but her hands still trembled. She looked so small under his oversized jacket, her face pale from fear and exhaustion. Mark crouched beside her. You're freezing, he said, handing her a thermal blanket from his bag. Here, wrap this around you. She took it slowly, whispering, "Thank you." For a while, they sat in silence. The storm outside grew louder, wind howling through cracks in the walls. Mark studied her quietly. Something about this girl didn't make sense. She was young, maybe 12 or 13, yet the way she spoke carried a strange wisdom, and the way those armored aliens hunted her, it wasn't just about punishment. It was about something bigger. Finally, he asked softly, "Lyra, what were those men really after?" She hesitated, her fingers gripping the blanket tightly. "It's not me they want," she said in a low voice. "It's what I carry." Mark frowned. "What do you mean?" From beneath her tunic, she pulled out a small crystal that shimmered faintly in the dark. It pulsed with a soft blue light, like a heartbeat. "My father gave this to me," she said. "He said it holds the truth." Mark leaned closer. "The truth about what?" Lyra looked up, tears filling her eyes. "About the war," Mark blinked. "The war? Between your people and the human colonies?" She nodded. "It was never supposed to happen. My father found proof. He said someone was lying to both sides, that there were others, a group that wanted the fighting to go on forever." Mark's mind raced. "You're saying there's someone profiting from the war?" "Yes," she whispered. "A syndicate that controls the trade between worlds. They start wars to sell weapons, fuel, and medicine. My father tried to expose them. That's why they came for him. And that's why they're hunting me now." Mark stared at the glowing crystal. It was small, fragile, yet it could change everything. If what she said was true, this little piece of data could stop a war that had already taken millions of lives. Before he could speak, a low buzzing sound echoed from the tunnel entrance. Mark quickly turned off the flashlight. The chamber went dark except for the faint glow of the crystal. Lyra clutched it tight, her breathing shallow. The buzzing grew louder. A red beam swept across the far wall. A drone had found them. "Stay still," Mark whispered. The beam moved closer, stopping right before it touched Lyra's face. Mark acted fast. He grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and threw it with all his strength. It hit the drone and sparks burst into the air. The machine spun wildly before crashing to the floor, but the explosion echoed down the tunnels. Now the hunters would know exactly where they were. Mark grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to move now." They ran through the tunnels, their footsteps splashing in puddles. Behind them, voices shouted and lights flashed. Mark felt the walls vibrate as the hunters fired energy blasts, collapsing parts of the tunnel. Rocks fell, blocking their path. "This way," Mark shouted, pulling her toward an emergency ladder that led upward. They climbed quickly, their hands slipping on the wet metal. The sound of footsteps echoed below. When they finally reached the surface, the rain hit them hard again. Lightning flashed across the sky, revealing a wide valley covered in fog. Far in the distance, the ruins of an old human relay station stood tall like a broken tower. "That's where we go next," Mark said. Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide with both fear and hope. "You believe me?" Mark nodded. "I've seen too many lies in this galaxy to ignore the truth when it's right in front of me." For the first time, she smiled faintly. But that moment of peace didn't last. The roar of engines filled the air again. Hunters were closing in. Mark looked back toward the forest, then at the girl beside him. The choice was clear. He had to protect her no matter the cost. "Run, Lyra," he said, "and don't look back." Together they disappeared into the storm. The secret she carried had now become his fight too. The storm had calmed by the time Mark and Lyra reached the broken relay station. The tall metal tower leaned to one side, half covered in vines and rust. Old human technology blinked faintly, powered by what little energy remained in the system. The place was silent except for the soft hum of machines that had not fully died. Mark guided Lyra inside through a half-open gate. The control room was dusty, filled with broken screens and scattered wires. "We can rest here," he said, checking his scanner. "No signals yet." They were safe for now. Lyra sat quietly on the floor, still clutching the glowing crystal. Her small hands looked fragile against the strange light. "Can we see what's inside?" she asked in a whisper. Mark nodded. "If it's data, this relay might still have the right interface," he said. He pulled out a portable power cell and connected it to the main terminal. Sparks flashed and the old screens came to life with a low hum. "All right, let's see what your father left behind." Lyra placed the crystal into a small socket. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a bright light filled the room and a holographic image appeared. A tall alien man with kind eyes and the same pale blue skin as Lyra. His voice was deep and calm. "My daughter," the message began. "If you are seeing this, then I am gone. You must listen carefully. The truth we found cannot die with me." Lyra covered her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. Mark stood silently beside her, his heart heavy. The hologram continued. "For years I believed our war with humans was about survival. But I learned the truth, it was built on lies. The Syndicate controls our leaders. They sell war like trade. They make both sides fight so they can sell weapons, energy, and control worlds through fear." Images flickered on the screen, ships exploding, battlefields filled with both humans and aliens dying side by side, while shadowy figures watched from hidden towers. "I tried to warn the Council," the man said, "but they called me a traitor. They sent soldiers to silence me. I had no choice but to hide the proof inside this crystal. Whoever finds it must show it to the galaxy. Only truth can bring peace." The hologram flickered again and his final words came out soft and broken. "Protect the child. She carries hope for all of us." Then the image faded. The room was silent again. Lyra fell to her knees, crying softly. Mark stood still, his mind spinning. This small child carried the truth that could stop an entire war. A war humans had also been tricked into fighting. He crouched beside her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Hey, he was brave," Mark said softly. "And he trusted you. That means something." She wiped her tears. "They killed him because he wanted peace." Mark looked at the fading hologram again. "Then we'll finish what he started." Suddenly his scanner beeped, a warning signal. Movement detected nearby. He turned to the window and saw faint lights in the distance. Dozens of them. The hunters had tracked their energy signal. "They found us," he said. Lyra's eyes widened. "What do we do?" Mark checked his tools and the weapon he had built from spare parts. "We fight if we have to. But our goal is to get this message out. If we can upload it to the galactic net, everyone will see the truth. They can't hide anymore." He opened the back door to the tower and pointed at the ridge beyond. "There's an uplink dish on the upper platform. It might still work. We'll have to climb fast." The wind outside howled again as thunder rumbled across the sky. Lyra stood holding the crystal tight against her chest. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said. Mark smiled faintly. "That's good. But stay behind me, all right?" They stepped outside as lightning split the dark clouds above them. The rain came again, cold and heavy. Mark led the way toward the metal stairs leading to the top. Every step echoed in the storm. Below them, shadows moved, armored hunters closing in, their eyes glowing red through the rain. Mark reached the upper deck and connected the crystal to the old transmitter. Lights flickered weakly, struggling to come alive. Come on," he whispered. The system beeped. A small green light flashed. It was working, but before the signal could stabilize, a voice shouted from below. "You cannot hide forever, human." The hunters had surrounded the tower. Lyra looked at him, fear returning to her face. "They'll destroy it." "Not if I can stop them," Mark said. He handed her his datapad. "If anything happens to me, you keep this crystal safe. Promise me." Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded. "I promise." The ground shook as an explosion hit the base of the tower. Mark took a deep breath, ready to defend her again. The storm roared around them like an angry beast. The truth was out there, locked in one glowing crystal, and they would risk everything to make sure the galaxy heard it. The storm raged over the broken relay tower as Mark prepared for the fight of his life. Lightning flashed across the sky, lighting up the dark valley below. The metal structure shook from the explosions as the alien hunters closed in, their voices echoing through the wind. "Stay low," Mark said to Lyra, who hid behind a crate with the glowing crystal clutched tightly to her chest. Her eyes were wide with fear, but her face showed quiet determination. Mark checked the control board. Only 60% of the message had uploaded. He needed a few more minutes. He grabbed his makeshift weapon, a fusion of human engineering and alien scrap parts, glowing faintly blue at the edges. The first explosion hit the side of the tower, sending sparks and smoke everywhere. "He's up there," one of the hunters shouted. Red targeting lights danced through the storm. Mark ducked behind a pillar and fired a pulse shot, the blue beam slicing through the rain. One of the hunters fell, his armor sparking violently. But more were coming, many more. The air filled with the hiss of plasma bolts. Mark moved fast, using the metal beams for cover, returning fire when he could. Each time he peeked out, he caught glimpses of glowing helmets and alien symbols flashing in the storm. Down below, Lyra tried to stay calm. The crystal pulsed in her hands as if alive. She looked up at Mark, her heart pounding. He was fighting for her father's truth, for peace. Lyra, Mark shouted between gunfire. If I fall, you run to the cliffs. Don't look back. She shook her head. No, you'll make it. Mark gave a small, tired smile. You sound like I used to, he said before firing another shot. A plasma blast hit the railing near him, sending shards of metal flying. One piece cut across his arm, burning the skin. He gritted his teeth and kept moving. The tower creaked under the pressure of the storm and battle, but Mark didn't stop. The upload bar blinked. 78%. A large shadow appeared on the lower deck, the commander of the hunters. His armor was darker, heavier, marked with golden lines. He looked up at Mark, his red eyes glowing through the storm. You protect a child of betrayal, the alien growled. She carries poison, not truth. Mark aimed his weapon. Then why are you so afraid of her message? The commander raised his weapon and fired. The blast hit the pillar near Mark, throwing him backward. He slammed into the metal floor, gasping for air. Pain shot through his ribs. The weapon skidded out of reach. Lyra screamed, Mark! She ran toward him, but he lifted a hand weakly. Stay back, he shouted. The commander climbed the stairs slowly, each step echoing in the thunder. You cannot stop what has already begun, he said. The galaxy will never believe the words of a traitor's child. Mark forced himself to stand, his knees shaking. Then we'll make them believe, he said. With one quick motion, he grabbed a power cable from the floor and jammed it into the metal railing. Sparks burst into the air. When the commander stepped closer, Mark swung the live cable, hitting the alien's armor. The shock exploded with a crack, throwing both of them back. Mark fell hard but managed to roll over. The commander's armor sparked and smoked. Human, the alien hissed. You fight like your kind always does, too stubborn to die. Mark grinned through the pain. You're finally getting it. The upload bar blinked again, 94%. Almost done. Then a final blast came from below, shaking the tower violently. The entire structure groaned and tilted. Lyra screamed as debris fell around them. The power line snapped and the lights flickered. The upload paused. No, Mark shouted, crawling toward the terminal. He slammed the controls, trying to restore the signal. Nothing. Then Lyra stepped beside him, her small hands glowing faintly blue. Let me help, she said. Before Mark could stop her, she pressed her hands to the damaged console. Energy flowed from her palms into the system. The screens lit up brighter than before, her power merging with the relay circuits. The upload bar began moving again, fast. The storm around them exploded with light as Lyra's energy spread through the tower. Her eyes glowed brighter, her voice trembling. It's working! Mark watched her, amazed and terrified. You're overloading yourself. She shook her head, smiling weakly. I can do this. For him. The commander tried to stand again, but Mark tackled him before he could reach her. The two struggled, trading blows as lightning flashed all around them. The metal floor shook under their weight. Finally, with one last hit, Mark shoved the alien backward. The commander stumbled and fell off the edge, disappearing into the storm below. The screen on the console blinked one last time. Upload complete. Mark sighed in relief, falling to his knees. The message of truth was now out in the galaxy. It couldn't be stopped. Lyra fell beside him, her glow fading slowly. Did we do it? She whispered. Mark smiled faintly. Yeah, kid, you did it. Above them, the dark clouds began to break, and for the first time, sunlight touched the tower. The storm was ending, but the story of their courage was only beginning. The sky burned with light as the tower cracked under its own weight. Smoke rose from the lower decks and sparks flew like falling stars. Mark held the trembling girl close, his body aching from the fight. The storm was fading, but the danger was not over. Lyra, we have to move, he shouted, coughing through the smoke. The metal beams groaned and began to collapse. The tower tilted dangerously to one side. Lyra clutched the glowing crystal, the same one that now held her father's truth, still pulsing faintly blue. Is it done? She asked, her voice shaking. Mark looked at the flickering console. The words upload complete still glowed on the screen. Yeah, he said, we did it. But they'll come for us now. As if answering him, a deafening explosion rocked the ground below. Alien ships were descending, black and sharp like knives in the sky. The Syndicate's soldiers had arrived, hundreds of them. Mark grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the emergency stairway. The wind howled, trying to tear them away. The tower shuddered again. "Go, Lyra, now!" he said. They raced down the trembling steps. Below them, fire spread across the base of the tower. The storm's lightning mixed with the blaze, painting the valley in gold and red. When they reached the lower deck, a giant piece of metal crashed beside them. Lyra screamed, but Mark pushed her forward, shielding her with his body. "Don't stop," he said through gritted teeth. "We can't stop now." The sound of engines grew louder. Dropships were landing all around, soldiers in dark armor pouring out. Their voices filled the air, shouting orders in a strange language. Energy weapons hummed as they aimed toward the collapsing tower. Mark spotted an old transport skimmer half buried under the mud near the relay's ruins. "There," he said, pointing. "If we can get that running, we might just make it." They sprinted through the smoke and debris. Lyra's legs burned, but she didn't complain. She could feel her father's courage inside her, driving her forward. Mark reached the skimmer and pulled open the hatch. The inside was covered in dust and ash, but the controls looked intact. Come on," he muttered, connecting a power cell from his tool bag. The engine sputtered weakly, then roared to life with a trembling hum. Lyra climbed in beside him, clutching the crystal tight. "Where will we go?" "Anywhere they can't find us," Mark said, pulling the throttle. The skimmer lifted off the ground just as plasma bolts hit the dirt where they had been standing seconds earlier. The blast wave shook the craft, but Mark kept it steady. Behind them, the relay tower finally gave in. The top section broke away, falling in slow motion before crashing into the valley with a roar that shook the sky. The explosion sent a shockwave across the plain, scattering the enemy troops. Mark looked back once. The tower was gone, but the truth had already been sent. Somewhere across the galaxy, people were watching the message her father recorded. Somewhere the lies were breaking apart. "Hold on, Lyra," he shouted as another ship appeared behind them. Plasma fire streaked across the sky. Mark twisted the controls, dodging through the storm clouds. "They don't give up, do they?" he muttered. Lyra's small voice broke the tension. "My father used to say, truth always makes enemies first." Mark smiled faintly despite the chaos. "Smart man." The skimmer's warning lights flashed red, damage in the rear thrusters. Mark gritted his teeth and guided the craft toward the mountains. "We'll hide there," he said. The ship behind them kept firing. One shot grazed the side of their craft, throwing sparks inside the cockpit. Lyra cried out, but Mark covered her with his arm. The smell of burning metal filled the air. Finally, they cleared the last ridge, disappearing into a canyon filled with thick fog. The enemy ships hovered above, scanning the area, but the storm and rocks hid them well. After a tense few minutes, the sound of engines faded away. Mark landed the skimmer inside a narrow cave. The engines whined softly before shutting down. He slumped back in his seat, exhausted, his hands trembling. Lyra turned to him, her eyes glowing softly in the dark. "Are we safe?" "For now," he said, forcing a weak smile. "But this is just the start. The truth is out there now. The galaxy will know." Lyra looked at the glowing crystal in her hands. "Do you think they'll believe it?" Mark looked out at the fading light beyond the cave. "They will," he said quietly, "because it came from someone who risked everything to tell it." The rain outside slowed to a gentle drizzle. The storm had finally passed. In the quiet, Mark and Lyra sat together, surrounded by the hum of the cooling engine. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was peace, fragile but real. Lyra rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for saving me." Mark looked down at her, a small smile on his tired face. "You saved me too, kid," he said softly. "More than you know." Outside, the clouds parted, revealing the stars. Somewhere among them, the truth her father died for was spreading, changing hearts, shaking powers, and giving hope to worlds that had forgotten what peace felt like. But deep down, both Mark and Lyra knew their journey wasn't over. The galaxy would come looking for the two who broke its greatest lie, and when that day came, they would be ready. Days passed since the storm ended. The galaxy that once burned in endless war now trembled with shock. The message Lyra's father left, the truth about the Syndicate, had spread like wildfire. Across every star system, people watched the recording. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Leaders called for peace, and those who had built empires on lies began to fall. But deep inside a quiet canyon on an unknown world, Mark and Lyra still hid. The war might have ended, but danger still lingered. The syndicate's remaining forces hunted the two who had exposed them. Inside their cave, the morning light glowed faintly. Mark sat by the fire, repairing a small transmitter. His wounds had healed slowly, but his spirit stayed strong. Beside him, Lyra slept peacefully, her small hand still holding the dimly glowing crystal, now cracked but still warm. Mark smiled softly. He hadn't known what peace felt like for a long time. This silence, the kind that didn't mean fear, felt strange but good. When Lyra woke, she rubbed her eyes and gave a sleepy smile. "Good morning," she said. "Morning, kid," Mark replied. "You hungry?" She nodded. He handed her a ration pack and she began to eat quietly. For a while they sat together in calm silence, the soft wind blowing through the cave entrance. Then suddenly a small beep came from Mark's transmitter. He froze. "It's a signal," he said. "Someone's broadcasting." He adjusted the controls, and a familiar voice echoed through the static, a human news anchor. "This just in, sources confirm that the syndicate's inner council has surrendered. Evidence provided by a mysterious data transmission revealed centuries of corruption. Several alien governments have united with the human coalition to rebuild the peace accords. The identity of the whistleblower remains unknown." Mark's hand tightened on the device. He turned to Lyra, who stared at the screen in wonder. "They know," she whispered. "They finally know," Mark smiled. "Your father's truth saved them all." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "He said truth would hurt before it healed. I didn't understand then, but now I do." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. It wasn't the same storm as before. This one was soft, almost gentle. Lyra stood at the cave's edge, looking up at the open sky. "Do you think he can see us?" she asked. Mark walked up beside her. "I think he's proud of you," he said quietly. "You finished what he started. Not many people get to say that." She smiled faintly, her eyes shimmering. "I couldn't have done it without you." Mark looked at her and chuckled softly. "Maybe not. But you gave me a reason to fight again. I'd forgotten what that felt like." They watched the sky together for a long time. Far away, tiny ships flew in formation, human and alien vessels working together for the first time in decades. The universe, once divided by hatred, was finally beginning to heal. As the sun began to set, Mark packed their few belongings into a small hover crate. "We can't stay here forever," he said. "Someone will come looking and we'll need to find a place where you can be safe." Lyra tilted her head. "Where will we go?" he smiled. "I know a small colony on Vega 3, good people there. They don't care what you look like or where you came from." "You'll like it," Lyra hesitated. "Will you come with me?" Mark paused for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, kid. I'm not letting you out of my sight." Her face brightened with a wide, innocent smile. For the first time in weeks, Mark laughed. It was soft, tired, but full of life. They boarded the small skimmer that had saved them before. Its engines coughed weakly but started. As it rose into the golden sky, the canyon below grew smaller and smaller. Lyra looked back at the cave where they had survived. It was now quiet, just another shadow in the cliffs. Mark glanced at her. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm ready." As the skimmer soared higher, sunlight broke through the clouds, bathing them in warm light. The galaxy looked peaceful from above, endless and bright. Mark looked out at the horizon, his voice soft. "You know, when you first ran behind me that day, I didn't know what I was getting into. I just saw a scared kid. I didn't know you'd change everything." Lyra smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "And I didn't know humans could care so much." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was full, not empty, but warm, full of unspoken trust. Down below, news broadcasts continued to spread across worlds, repeating the story again and again. The story of the alien child who carried the truth and the human who protected her. People called it the miracle of the storm, and whenever the tale was told, it always began the same way. An alien girl came running and hid behind a human, and the reason will make you cry.